Al walked slowly and calmly through the woods, breathing in the fresh morning air. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in a soft orange, its rays filtering through the trees. This was a habit he had developed over the years, a necessity to find peace in the solitude of nature, far from the noise of the world. He lived in a small wooden cabin at the edge of the forest, a retreat he had built himself after leaving a life that no longer felt like his. The silence was his company. Suddenly, the silence was shattered. A piercing howl ripped through the air. Al froze, his muscles tensing, heart pounding in his chest. The cry, raw and desperate, took him by surprise. It wasn't a typical wolf call. Something about it was off, laden with distress. He carefully set his backpack down and scanned the area. The howl came from a nearby clearing where the trees opened up to a small grassy patch. Moving cautiously, he made his way through the underbrush. As he reached the clearing, he stopped abruptly. There before him was a massive wolf, its gray fur matted with dirt and blood. The animal was trapped. One of its hind legs was caught in a steel trap, and in its struggle to free itself, the wolf had worsened the injury. Now it lay exhausted, its chest rising and falling with labored breaths. Its eyes, fierce and wild, were filled with a haunting resignation. Al felt a wave of deep compassion wash over him. It was as if he saw a reflection of himself in the wounded animal, trapped, helpless. He took a step forward, but the wolf noticed him immediately. A low, weak growl escaped its throat, its hackles raising slightly, but there was no true aggression in its eyes, only fear. Al halted, not wanting to aggravate the situation. He observed the wolf more closely and noticed something unusual. It was a female, and her nipples were swollen with milk. She had pups somewhere nearby, hidden in a den, waiting for her return. The realization hit him hard. Without their mother, those pups wouldn't survive for long. Al couldn't let that happen. He wasn't the kind of man to walk away from a living being in need. Life had thrown him too many challenges, and it had shaped him into someone who refused to turn his back on those in trouble. But how could he get close to the injured wolf without risking an attack? Taking a deep breath, he steadied his nerves. He knelt a few feet from the wolf, speaking in a low, calm voice, as though his words could somehow reassure her. Slowly he moved closer, extending a hand toward the trapped paw. When his fingers brushed against the trap's cold metal, the wolf let out a soft whimper of pain. The trap was old and rusted, bent from the wolf's desperate attempts to escape. Al had no other option. He picked up a rock from the ground and with all his strength began striking the release mechanism. After several hard blows, the trap finally snapped open. The wolf didn't move. She was too weak to react. Al could feel the warmth of her breath as he gently lifted her. Carefully, he hoisted her onto his shoulders, feeling the weight of her body with each step. Though his cabin wasn't far, the journey seemed to stretch on forever. Each step was slow and deliberate, but he didn't stop. When he finally reached his cabin, he laid her down near the fireplace and began to warm the room. Al opened his first aid kit and cleaned the wounds. He was practical, used to handling critical situations. He knew exactly what to do. Despite the severity of her condition, the injuries weren't fatal, but time was against them. Every minute wasted could mean the death of her pups, likely still hidden in a den somewhere nearby. Al decided to act quickly. Leaving the wolf covered with an old blanket by the fire, he grabbed a flashlight and his rifle just in case. He ventured back into the woods, following the faint tracks left by the mother. Broken branches and muddy paw prints guided him as he searched, until after about an hour he spotted something. A small hole beneath a rock, barely visible through the foliage. It was the den. With his heart in his throat, Al crouched down and softly called, hoping the pups would hear him. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then a tiny nose peeked out from the darkness. A small, weak wolf pup timidly emerged from the den, followed by 3 others. They were hungry, trembling, but alive. Al knelt down, opened his backpack, and carefully placed the pups inside. There was no time to waste. He hurried back, and when he reached the cabin, the weak cries of the pups stirred the mother. The moment she saw them was unforgettable. The mother's eyes lit up, and with a soft whine, she pulled them close. The pups rushed to her, and she began licking them one by one before letting them nurse the milk they had so desperately awaited. Al felt a surge of emotion he hadn't expected. For days he cared for the mother and her pups, feeding them with meat and fish he caught daily. His bond with the wolf family grew silently, a delicate dance between man and nature, between trust and respect. Until one morning, as Al stepped outside to gather firewood, he found an entire wolf pack gathered in the clearing. He froze, both surprised and frightened. But it was the mother he had saved who broke the tension with a single bark. A few days later, the mother was ready to return to her wild world. She stepped out of the cabin, her pups following closely behind. Al watched them go, knowing he would never see them again. But he also knew that, in some way, they were forever connected.